Title: She thought she was the last Deathworlder. Part 1. Do not call me a survivor. I am the last thing my world left behind. Vaila Kryn stood beneath a sky that had forgotten how to be blue. The horizon of Vare burned with endless storms, clouds twisting above mountains of black stone, while rivers of molten rock carved slow paths through the ancient landscape. To most species in the galaxy, this planet was a warning. A place marked on every navigation system with one simple message: avoid. To Vaila, it was home, or what remained of one. She stood alone on a cliff overlooking the valley where the Kharuun cities had once existed. There were no lights below, no voices, no ships rising into the atmosphere, no family waiting behind a reinforced door. Only the wind and the sound of a world that had survived everything except its own people. For 300 years, the galaxy had told stories about the Kharuun, the last Deathworlders, the creatures who adapted where others failed, the species that could breathe thin air, endure brutal climates, and walk through environments that would break ordinary beings. But stories were easy when no one was left to tell the truth. Vaila lowered her head and touched the small metal symbol hanging around her neck. It was the final piece of her civilization she carried with her. I am still here, she whispered. The words sounded strange, because she was not sure who she was saying them for. Her people had not lost a war. They had not been defeated by a stronger enemy. They had simply disappeared, one generation at a time, until she became the final name in a history book nobody opened anymore. The galaxy believed that was what made her special. Vaila believed it was what made her tired. A warning tone suddenly echoed from the small exploration vessel behind her. She turned sharply. The ship's damaged sensors had detected something impossible. A transmission, not from a military vessel, not from a colony. A human distress signal. Vaila froze. Human. She had studied the species before. A young civilization. Clever. Ambitious. Fragile. That was what the records said. Humans came from Earth, a world classified as challenging but not considered a true death world by most galactic scholars. A world with storms, predators, diseases, natural disasters. But nothing compared to Vare. Nothing compared to Kharuun. Vaila almost ignored the signal. Almost. Then she remembered something her father had told her when she was young. The universe does not care if you are the strongest creature alive. It only cares if you choose to keep moving. She hated that she still remembered his words. She hated that they still mattered. Minutes later, her ship reached the source of the transmission. A damaged human research vessel drifted silently above the planet's surface. No escort, no weapons platform, no backup. Just one small ship surrounded by a place where almost nothing should have been able to survive. Vaila entered through the airlock expecting to find a dead crew. Instead, she found a human standing inside the engineering bay, covered in dust, holding a repair tool, and arguing with a broken machine. Come on, the human muttered. You are a billion-dollar piece of equipment. You can at least fail in a more interesting way. Vaila stared. The human looked up. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then the human slowly lowered the tool. Well, he said, looking at the towering alien warrior standing in the doorway. I was hoping rescue would arrive before the planet tried to kill me again. Vaila studied him carefully. No armor. No fear. No hesitation. You are human, she said. The man nodded. Daniel Carter. Vaila looked around the damaged ship, then back at him. You survived Vare. Daniel glanced toward the storm outside. Yeah. I noticed that was becoming a problem. For the first time in many years, Vaila did not know what to say, because something impossible had just happened. She had spent her entire life believing she was the last Deathworlder in the galaxy. And now, standing in front of her, was a human from Earth who looked at the most dangerous planet she had ever known, and acted like it was just another bad day at work. Title: She thought she was the last Deathworlder. Part 2. Vaila did not move for several seconds. The human standing in front of her should not have been possible. Every instinct she had developed across decades of survival told her to study him, measure him, find the weakness hidden beneath the calm expression. But the more she watched Daniel Carter, the less sense he made. He was tired. That much was obvious. His breathing was heavier than normal. His clothes were damaged from working inside the failing ship, and there was a small cut on his hand from a repair tool. Yet his eyes remained steady. He looked at Vare the same way he looked at the broken engine beside him. A difficult problem, not an impossible one. You are not afraid of me, Vaila said. Daniel glanced at her. Should I be? The answer bothered her more than fear would have. Every intelligent species she had met reacted the same way when they saw Kharuun. They stepped back. They lowered their voices. They remembered the old stories about her people. Daniel simply looked curious. Most people who meet me for the first time choose different words, Vaila replied. Usually something involving danger. Daniel looked around the damaged engineering bay. To be fair, I have been stranded on a planet trying to destroy my ship for the last 14 hours. You are not even in the top 3 things I am worried about. For a moment, Vaila almost believed she had misunderstood the translation system. No one spoke to her like that. Not because she demanded respect, but because everyone already gave it. Fear was easier than understanding. Daniel returned to the control panel and continued working. Vaila watched his hands move across the unfamiliar human equipment. Your ship should have been abandoned, she said. The atmosphere outside is unstable. The gravity fluctuations alone would disable most biological systems within minutes. Daniel nodded. Yeah, the company's safety report had a few less dramatic words for that. You are joking. A little. He looked at the damaged readings. Mostly because if I stop joking, I start thinking about how far away rescue is. That answer surprised her. Not because he was calm. Because he admitted he was afraid. Vaila had spent her entire life believing fear was something weak creatures experienced and strong creatures overcame. Daniel was showing her something different. He was afraid, and he continued anyway. Before she could ask another question, the ship suddenly shook. Warning lights flashed across the engineering bay. Daniel immediately moved toward the controls. That is not good. Vaila looked at the display. Your power core is failing. I noticed the red lights. If the core shuts down, the ship will lose atmospheric control. Daniel took a slow breath. How long? Vaila calculated quickly. Approximately 20 minutes. Daniel looked at the countdown. Then he grabbed a toolkit. Okay, 20 minutes is not ideal. Vaila stared at him. You intend to repair it alone? Daniel stopped and looked back at her. No. I was hoping the last Deathworlder in the galaxy would know something about surviving impossible situations. The words struck deeper than he realized. Vaila had spent years hearing that title as a burden, a reminder that she was alone. But this human said it like it was not a curse, like it was a fact that could bring 2 strangers together. She stepped toward the damaged core chamber. Show me what you need. Daniel raised an eyebrow. You are helping? Vaila looked at the failing ship around them. I survived there. She paused. You survived there. I think we should both learn why. Together, they entered the unstable core room as the warning alarms grew louder. Neither of them knew it yet, but the damage inside the human vessel was not the only thing waiting for them. Something else had been tracking the signal from the moment Daniel arrived. And whoever was coming did not want answers. They wanted control. Title. She thought she was the last Deathworlder. Part 3. Vaila had spent her entire life learning how to survive alone. She had memorized the sounds of storms before they arrived, the patterns of shifting ground beneath her feet, and the small changes in the air that meant danger was approaching. But nothing in her years on Vare prepared her for working beside a human. Daniel Carter moved through the damaged core chamber with a strange combination of caution and confidence. He did not rush. He did not pretend the situation was safe. He simply focused on what needed to be done. Hand me the thermal regulator, Daniel said. Vaila looked at the small device on the workbench. This one? Yes. She picked it up easily. Daniel paused. You know, most people would ask what I am doing before touching random equipment on a failing spacecraft. Vaila studied him. Most people would not be standing on Vare. Daniel gave a quiet laugh. Fair point. The human reaction confused her. He did not laugh because the situation was funny. He laughed because somehow, even here, he refused to let fear control every moment. Vaila watched as he adjusted the damaged system. His hands moved quickly, but she noticed something else. He checked everything twice. Every connection, every measurement, every possible failure point. It was not instinct alone. It was discipline. You are not like the others, she said. Daniel looked up. The others? Other species I have met. When they face danger, they search for someone stronger to protect them. Daniel looked back at the machine. Humans do that too. Vaila seemed surprised. You do? Of course. Nobody survives alone. That is kind of the whole point. The answer stayed with her. Kharuun history was built around survival of the strongest. The weak depended on the strong, and the strong carried the burden alone. But Daniel spoke as if survival was something shared. Before Vaila could respond, the ship's sensors made a sharp sound. Both of them turned. A new signal appeared on the display, not from the planet, from orbit. Daniel's expression changed immediately. The relaxed engineer disappeared. For the first time, Vaila saw the professional hidden underneath. "What is it?" she asked. Daniel studied the readings. "Someone found our distress signal." "Rescue?" "No." He looked at the identification code. "At least, I do not think so." Vaila moved closer. The symbol on the screen was familiar. Galactic Preservation Authority. Her expression hardened. "They are here for me." Daniel noticed the change. "You know them? They do not rescue creatures like me." Her voice became colder. "They contain them." Daniel looked at the approaching vessel. "Why?" Vaila was silent for a moment. Then she answered honestly. "Because the galaxy is comfortable when dangerous things are extinct." The words hung between them. Daniel looked at the countdown. The core still had less than 10 minutes before shutdown. The approaching ship would arrive sooner. 2 problems. 1 damaged vessel. 1 organization that believed Vaila belonged in a cage. Daniel grabbed his toolkit. "Okay." Vaila looked at him. "Okay. Yes. We fix the ship, then we deal with whoever is coming." She stared at him. "You understand they may consider you a threat as well." Daniel tightened the final connection. "Maybe." He looked toward the approaching signal. "But I have noticed something about people who are afraid of monsters." Vaila waited. Daniel turned toward her. "They usually decide what a monster is before they ever meet one." For the first time in years, Vaila did not feel like the last survivor of a forgotten world. She felt like she was standing beside someone who understood what it meant to be misunderstood. Then the ship lights flickered back on. The core stabilized. But outside, the unknown vessel entered orbit above them, carrying someone who had spent years searching for the last Deathworlder. And now, they had found 2. The moment the Galactic Preservation Authority vessel entered Vare's atmosphere, Vaila knew the galaxy had not come to negotiate. The ship moved with the confidence of something that had never been challenged, descending through the storm clouds like the planet itself was supposed to make room for it. Daniel Carter watched the display from the human research vessel's cockpit, his expression focused. "That is not a rescue ship," he said. Vaila stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the approaching vessel. "No, it is a collection ship." Daniel looked at her. "That sounds worse." "It is." The words were simple, but the meaning behind them was heavy. Vaila had spent years running from one thing. Not enemies. Not storms. Not even the extinction of her species. She had been running from the idea that one day someone would decide her existence was too dangerous to allow. The ship landed several hundred feet away from them. The ramp opened, and Commander Lucius Vane stepped onto the rocky surface of Vare. He wore a dark exploration uniform marked with the symbol of the Galactic Preservation Authority. Behind him stood a team of specialists carrying advanced scanning equipment. They were not soldiers. They did not need to be. Their confidence came from believing they were the people who decided what belonged in the galaxy. Lucius looked toward Vaila first. "Kharuun, survivor." His voice was calm, almost polite. "Your survival has been confirmed." Vaila stepped forward. "I was not hiding." "No," Lucius replied. "You were waiting." Daniel noticed the way Vaila's posture changed. She became colder, more distant. The human engineer had seen that expression before. It was not anger. It was preparation. "Commander," Daniel said, stepping beside her. "You crossed a dangerous planet just to find one person. That seems like a lot of effort for a simple conversation." Lucius looked at him. His expression changed slightly. Confusion, then curiosity. "Human." He checked his scanner. "Interesting." Daniel frowned. That is usually not how people introduce themselves. Lucius ignored the comment and studied the readings. "You were exposed to Vare's environment." "Yes." "For how long?" "About 18 hours. The people behind Lucius exchanged looks. Vaila noticed immediately. Daniel noticed too. "What?" he asked. Lucius lowered the scanner. "Nothing." But his face said otherwise. The commander had expected to find one impossible survivor. He had found another. Suddenly, alarms sounded from the human ship. Daniel turned toward the cockpit. "That is not good." The storm had intensified, and the damaged landing system began losing stability. The ship was sliding slowly across the uneven terrain. Lucius looked at the vessel. "Your craft is unstable." "Thank you for the update," Daniel replied. I had not noticed the entire ship shaking. Vaila almost smiled. "Almost." Daniel moved quickly toward the controls while Vaila followed. Can you stabilize it? She asked. Probably. Probably. I find confidence is dangerous when dealing with machines that are actively trying to fail. The ship tilted again. Outside, the storm grew stronger. Lucius and his team watched from the surface as Daniel and Vaila worked together. The human repaired systems using careful calculations. The Kharuun survivor adapted instantly to conditions that should have slowed her down. Two different Deathworlders solving a problem neither one could solve alone. Lucius watched silently. This was not what his reports predicted. When the ship finally stabilized, Daniel stepped outside and looked at the commander. You came here because you thought Vaila was dangerous. Lucius said nothing. Daniel continued. But now you have a bigger problem. The commander raised an eyebrow. And what would that be? Daniel looked back at the planet behind them. You found out the galaxy has been measuring danger the wrong way. For the first time, Lucius Vane did not look certain. He looked concerned. Because the records said there was one Deathworlder left in existence. But the evidence standing in front of him suggested something far more complicated. And the Galactic Preservation Authority had no idea what to do with two of them. Lucius Vane had spent 20 years studying threats. He had reviewed alien civilizations, classified dangerous environments, and written reports that determined whether entire species could safely exist within civilized space. He believed he understood the difference between a survivor and a danger. But standing on the surface of Vare, watching a human engineer and the last Kharuun work together, he felt something he rarely experienced. Uncertainty. Inside the Galactic Preservation Authority vessel, the atmosphere was quiet. Too quiet. Vaila sat across from Lucius in the observation chamber, while Daniel stood near the window, looking out at the endless storms covering the planet. You are making a mistake, Vaila said. Lucius folded his hands. That depends on what you believe the mistake is. You are not protecting the galaxy from me. You are protecting the galaxy from something you do not understand. Lucius remained calm. That is exactly why organizations like mine exist. Daniel turned away from the window. You know, every time someone says something like that, it usually means they have already made a decision before hearing the answer. Lucius looked at him. You believe I am unreasonable. I believe you are scared. The room became silent. Vaila looked at Daniel, surprised by how directly he spoke. Lucius did not react immediately. Most beings avoided speaking to him that way. Humans apparently did not share that habit. You have been on Vare less than a day, Lucius said. You have no understanding of the history behind my decisions. Daniel nodded slowly. Maybe, but I understand people. Lucius looked toward him. People. Anyone who thinks control is the same thing as safety. The words stayed in the room. Lucius walked to the main display and activated a series of records. Images and data appeared in the air. The Kharuun. Ancient reports. Failed diplomatic encounters. Warnings from worlds that had encountered them long ago. Your species was classified as a potential extinction-level risk, Lucius explained. Vaila watched the information without emotion. She had seen those records before. The galaxy did not remember her people as individuals. It remembered them as a problem. And what about humans? Daniel asked. Lucius looked at him. What about them? Have you classified us yet? For the first time, Lucius hesitated. That hesitation told Vaila everything. Daniel noticed it too. You have. Lucius remained silent. You just do not want to say it out loud. The commander closed the file. Humanity is unusual. That is a polite word. Your species developed technology rapidly. Your history contains repeated cycles of conflict and cooperation. You are unpredictable. Daniel smiled slightly. That sounds like a scientist trying to describe a person who refuses to follow instructions. Vaila looked at him. You find this amusing? A little. Daniel looked back at Lucius. Because I think you expected monsters to look different. The lights suddenly changed. An emergency signal appeared across the ship's systems. The crew members moved quickly between stations. What happened? Lucius asked. An officer checked the data. Commander, the planetary monitoring network detected a secondary signal. Vaila stood immediately. Her expression changed. What kind of signal? The officer looked uncertain. A Kharuun transmission. Everyone became still. Vaila slowly stepped closer. Impossible. The source is beneath the northern continent, the officer said. It has been inactive for centuries. Daniel looked at Vaila. You did not know about this? She shook her head. No. For the first time since meeting her, Daniel saw something unexpected in Vaila's eyes. Not fear. Something closer to hope. Lucius watched both of them carefully. A forgotten signal. A human from Earth. The last Kharuun survivor. Too many impossible events were happening at once. Then the transmission began. A single message repeated across every screen. 3 words. The experiment continues. Daniel looked at Vaila. Vaila looked at Lucius. And Lucius realized the truth. The galaxy had not discovered the last Deathworlder. It had discovered that someone had been hiding the first one. Title: She thought she was the last Deathworlder. Part 6. The message repeated across every screen inside the Galactic Preservation Authority vessel. 3 words. 3 words that changed everything. The experiment continues. Vaila stared at the transmission as if the entire universe had suddenly become unfamiliar. For years, she believed her people had vanished because of time, because of nature, because survival had simply become impossible. But now there was a different possibility. Someone had known. Someone had hidden the truth. Who sent this? Daniel asked quietly. The officer at the console shook his head. We do not know. The signal is coming from beneath the northern continent of Ver. The source is ancient. Lucius Vane looked at the data without blinking. But Vaila noticed something. A small hesitation. A reaction too quick for most people to catch. You know something, she said. Lucius turned toward her. Careful. You knew this was possible. The commander remained silent. Daniel looked between them. Okay, that is not the face of someone hearing new information. Lucius walked toward the center of the room. There are things you do not understand. Then explain them, Daniel replied. That usually helps. Lucius ignored the comment. He activated a private channel. Several members of his crew received new instructions, and suddenly the atmosphere inside the ship changed. The calm professionalism disappeared. Doors locked. Access points closed. Vaila immediately noticed. You are not investigating the signal. Lucius looked at her. I am preventing a threat. Daniel stepped forward. By locking everyone inside a ship? Lucius's expression hardened. You have no idea what is below that planet. Vaila moved closer. Neither do you. That answer surprised him. Because she was right. The commander had spent years studying the Kharuun, but he had never truly understood them. He had studied records. He had studied warnings. He had studied fear. But he had never spoken to one. Daniel noticed the change in Lucius's expression. You are not afraid of what is under the planet. He paused. You are afraid of what happens if the galaxy finds out. Lucius looked at him. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then the ship shook slightly as the ancient signal grew stronger. The lights flickered. The main display changed. A new image appeared. Not a message. A recording. A Kharuun figure appeared on the screen, wearing ancient armor marked with symbols Vaila recognized immediately. Her breath stopped. That is impossible, she whispered. Daniel looked at her. You know them? Vaila stepped closer to the screen. That symbol belonged to the first Kharuun explorers. Lucius watched her carefully. Before your species disappeared. Vaila nodded slowly. Before we were told we disappeared. The recording continued. A voice from the past spoke through the translation system. If you are seeing this, then the galaxy has finally discovered what we protected. Daniel frowned. Protected from who? The recording paused. Then the answer appeared. From those who believed survival belonged only to the strongest. Nobody moved. Lucius immediately shut down the transmission. Enough. Daniel looked at him. You know what this means. It means nothing. You are lying. The words were calm, but they landed harder than anger. Lucius turned toward Daniel. You think you understand this situation because you survived one difficult planet. Daniel shook his head. No. I think I understand because you are more worried about the truth than the danger. Vaila looked at the commander. For the first time, she saw him clearly. Not as a protector, not as a leader, as someone carrying a secret. Lucius gave one final order. Prepare the vessel. We are leaving. Daniel looked at the sealed doors. You are running. Lucius stopped. No. His voice was cold. I am making sure nobody else discovers what is buried on Ver. As the ship prepared to depart, Vaila watched the planet below. The place she thought held only memories of a lost civilization was hiding something else. Something that had survived longer than anyone knew. And now Lucius Vane was willing to do anything to keep it hidden. The command came before anyone could react. Prepare the vessel. We are leaving. Lucius Vane's voice carried through the control room with the confidence of someone who expected obedience. But this time, Nobody moved. Not immediately. The crew members looked at each other, uncertain. They had followed the commander across dozens of worlds. They had trusted his decisions because he always appeared to have the answer. But now there was something different. A hidden signal. A buried secret. And a commander who was suddenly more interested in silence than discovery. Daniel Carter noticed it first. Your team is hesitating. Lucius looked at him. They are following procedure. Daniel glanced around the room. No. They are wondering if the procedure was built on a lie. The words created a tension that even Lucius could not ignore. Vaila stood near the main display, still looking at the ancient Kharuun recording. The voice from the past had changed everything. Her entire understanding of her own history had been based on one assumption, that her people were gone. But now she knew someone had made that story convenient. Take us to the signal, Vaila said. Lucius immediately refused. No. Why? Because whatever is beneath that planet is not meant to be found. Daniel crossed his arms. That is not an answer. Lucius looked at him. It is the only answer you need. The human engineer studied him carefully. Daniel was not the kind of person who enjoyed confrontation. He preferred machines because machines were honest. If something was broken, there was a reason. A damaged part. A failed connection. A missing piece. People were harder. People could hide the broken parts. You are protecting a secret, Daniel said. And secrets usually mean someone made a choice they do not want questioned. Lucius stepped closer. You believe you understand everything because you have survived one harsh environment. Daniel shook his head. No. I understand because I know what people look like when they are afraid of the truth. The commander turned away. For the first time, Vaila saw something she had not expected from him. Not confidence. Not control. Doubt. Then the ship suddenly lost power. The entire vessel went dark for 3 seconds. 3 seconds was enough. Vaila moved toward the navigation panel. The signal interrupted the systems. The crew began restoring power, but the damage was strange. Not broken equipment. Not a mechanical failure. Something had communicated with the ship. Daniel looked at the readings. That is impossible. Vaila looked at him. What? The system did not fail. He pointed at the display. It responded. Everyone became silent. The ancient signal from Vare was not just a recording. It was a key. Lucius understood immediately. His expression changed. No. Vaila turned toward him. You knew? The commander did not answer. He did not need to. The truth was already visible. Years ago, the Galactic Preservation Authority had discovered something beneath Vare. They had not destroyed it. They had hidden it. What is down there? Daniel asked. Lucius finally spoke. The reason the Kharuun survived. Vaila stepped closer. That is impossible. Your species was not the end result of evolution, Lucius said quietly. It was the beginning of something. Daniel looked at the commander. And you buried it because? Lucius looked at the planet below. Because the galaxy has spent thousands of years believing it controls the future. That discovery would prove we never did. Suddenly, a new transmission appeared. Not from the planet. From Earth. Daniel's communication device activated. A familiar voice came through. Daniel Carter, this is Earth Exploration Command. We received your distress signal. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, relieved to hear home. Then the message continued. We also detected the Kharuun transmission. We are sending a diplomatic team. Lucius looked alarmed. Earth cannot come here. Daniel looked at him. Why? The commander stared at the approaching signal from Earth. Because once they arrive, everyone will know. Vaila looked down at Vare's endless storms. For the first time in centuries, her dead world was calling to someone. Not just her. Not just the Kharuun. Something beneath the surface had been waiting for a species that could understand it. And now 2 Deathworlders were coming to answer. Title: She thought she was the last Deathworlder. Part 8. The first Earth vessel appeared above Vare 3 hours after Daniel Carter's transmission reached home. It was not a warship. It was not a military fleet. It was a research vessel carrying scientists, engineers, and diplomats. Lucius Vane watched the arrival from the observation deck with a level of concern that Vaila had never seen before. You look worried, she said. Lucius did not answer immediately. You do not understand what is coming. Daniel stood beside her, watching the human ship descend through the clouds. Actually, I think I do. My people are coming because they heard someone needed help. Lucius turned toward him. That is exactly what makes humanity dangerous. Daniel looked confused. Helping people? Choosing to interfere. The commander looked at Vare below them. The galaxy survives because powerful species are controlled, because dangerous discoveries are contained before they change everything. Viola stepped closer. You mean before they challenge those already in power? Lucius remained silent. That silence was the answer. When the Earth team arrived, Daniel expected military officers. Instead, the first person through the landing ramp was an older woman carrying a tablet and wearing a simple exploration jacket. "Daniel Carter," she said. "You look worse than your report described." Daniel smiled slightly. "Good to see you too, Doctor." Viola watched the reunion carefully. There was no fear, no suspicion. The humans greeted Daniel like a person, not a valuable asset. It was different from every civilization she had known. "Doctor?" Viola asked. Daniel turned. "Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Xenobiology and Planetary Adaptation Research." Sarah looked at Viola and paused. Not because she was afraid, because she was fascinated. "You are Kharuun." Viola nodded. "You know my species?" Sarah looked at Lucius. "We know the records were incomplete." The commander immediately stepped forward. "This information is restricted." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "That is interesting. Because according to the data Earth received, you marked Vaer as an uninhabited world 40 years ago." Daniel looked at Lucius. "You knew?" The commander said nothing. Sarah activated her tablet and displayed archived information. Hidden research stations. Forgotten expeditions. Missing reports. The truth slowly became clear. The Galactic Preservation Authority had discovered evidence that the Kharuun were not simply survivors. They were part of a larger evolutionary project created millions of years earlier. The Kharuun were designed to adapt, Sarah explained. Viola stared at the information. "Designed? Yes, but not as weapons." Sarah looked at her. "As proof that life could survive almost anywhere." Daniel looked toward the planet. "Then why hide it?" Lucius finally answered. "Because the galaxy built its entire system around the belief that some worlds were dangerous and some species were civilized." His voice became quieter. "The Kharuun proved that was a lie." Viola looked at him. "And humans?" Lucius looked at Daniel. For once, he did not have an immediate answer. Sarah stepped forward. "Humans were never supposed to be part of this discovery." Daniel frowned. "What does that mean?" She looked at the data. Earth was never classified as a normal world. It was classified as an unknown. The room became silent. Daniel slowly looked back at her. "Unknown." Sarah nodded. "Because no one could explain how a species from a planet like Earth survived without outside intervention." Viola looked at Daniel differently now. Not as an unusual human. Not as a strange survivor. As evidence. The same impossible evidence she was. Then the ancient signal from beneath Vaer activated again. This time, the message was different. It was not a warning. It was an invitation. 2 Deathworld species detected. "Welcome home." Daniel and Viola looked at each other. The truth beneath Vaer was finally opening. But somewhere in the galaxy, others were already learning what Lucius feared most. Humanity had not arrived at the edge of the unknown. Humanity had been part of it all along. The ancient message continued to echo through the underground chamber beneath Vaer. 2 Deathworld species detected. "Welcome home." For a long moment, nobody spoke. Not Daniel. Not Viola. Not even Lucius Vane. The commander who had spent years controlling information suddenly looked like someone who had run out of places to hide. Viola slowly stepped toward the ancient structure beneath the planet's surface. The walls around them were covered with symbols from a civilization that had disappeared before most modern species had even reached the stars. "My people built this?" she asked. Dr. Sarah Mitchell studied the readings. "Your ancestors were part of it, but they were not the only ones." Daniel looked around the chamber. "Then who built all of this?" Sarah smiled slightly. "That is the question everyone has been asking for a very long time." The answer was not a weapon. It was not a secret technology. It was something much more unexpected. The chamber contained records of countless worlds, thousands of species, different environments, different challenges, different paths to survival. The ancient civilization had not created warriors. They had studied life itself. They wanted to understand one simple question. How could life continue when the universe constantly tried to end it? Viola looked through the records of her own people. For the first time, she saw them differently. The Kharuun were not created to be feared. They were not born to be monsters. They were explorers, survivors, a species that learned to endure because they loved life enough to protect it. Daniel stood beside her. "You know, that changes things." Viola looked at him. How? You spent your whole life thinking survival was about being the last one standing. He looked at the ancient records. Maybe it was about making sure someone came after you. Those words stayed with her, because she finally understood something she had missed for years. Being the last Deathworlder was never about being alone. It was about carrying something forward. Across the chamber, Lucius watched quietly. Sarah approached him. You knew pieces of this. He did not deny it. I found the records years ago, and you buried them. Lucius looked at the ancient walls. I saw what happened when civilizations discovered power they were not ready for. Daniel looked at him. So you decided nobody deserved the chance. Lucius lowered his eyes. For the first time, the commander did not look like a leader defending a decision. He looked like a person carrying the weight of one. I thought control would prevent disaster. Viola looked at him. And did it? Lucius had no answer. Because the truth was standing in front of him. The secret he protected had not created chaos. It had brought two worlds together. In the days that followed, the discovery of Vare changed the galaxy. The records were released. The hidden history was revealed. The Galactic Preservation Authority faced questions from every corner of civilized space. But something unexpected happened. Nobody demanded revenge. Humanity did not arrive with threats. The Kharuun did not demand punishment. Instead, they offered something the galaxy rarely saw: cooperation. Months later, Daniel stood on a new research platform above Vare. The planet was still dangerous. The storms still covered the surface. But now there were lights below. There were voices. There was life. Viola joined him at the observation window. Your people are strange, she said. Daniel smiled. That is usually what people say right before explaining why. You survived a world that should have ended you. Yet you do not speak of victory. Daniel looked at the planet below. Because surviving is not the same as winning. Viola waited. Then what is winning? Daniel thought for a moment. Making sure nobody has to survive alone. For the first time since the fall of the Kharuun, Viola felt something she thought she had lost forever. Not hope. Something stronger. Belonging. Across the galaxy, the story of Vare became a reminder that changed how species looked at each other. A Deathworld did not create monsters. It created survivors. And sometimes, the most dangerous thing in the universe was not the creature that could endure anything. It was the creature that endured everything and still chose kindness.